Hi, I'm Kelly with citruscycles.ca. I'm here with the Bulls 24E, and my daughter is along to help me out. She's going to help me on the ride test as well. And as you can see, this has smaller tires. What size of tires are these?
24-inch.
24-inch. And why did they put a 24-inch tire on this bike?
Because it'll make the bike lower to the ground for shorter people like me.
That's right. So in fact, you can fit and ride on this bike. And they've designed it for shorter people, children, teens that want a lower bike. And it certainly achieves that purpose. It's a lot of fun. In fact, it's got all high quality bike components, and of course it's an electric bike. We've got the Bosch Active Line Plus on here. So my daughter's been riding this for a while. Is the Active Line Plus powerful enough, do you think?
Yes, I can beat you up all the hills.
In fact, she's right. She keeps beating me up the hills. I'm riding a bike with the Bosch CX, which is Bosch's top-end, highest torque motor. This is actually Bosch's lower torque motor. It's 50 Newton meters of torque. Still assists you all the way up to 32 kilometers an hour. But the reason why Bulls went with this motor on this bike is it's actually lighter than the rest of the Bosch motors. And if you turn the assistance off or exceed that 32 kilometers an hour, there's no resistance at all. It just pedals like a regular bike. That lighter weight is important because it helps to reduce the ratio of the weight of the bike to the rider. And that's why my daughter can beat me up the hills. Even though it is a slightly less powerful motor, it definitely has more than enough torque to get a light rider like her up any of the hills. And so you may be wondering, why would you want a kid's e-bike? Why would you want your children riding an e-bike? Well, as you'll see in the test ride video, you can actually maintain a much higher pace. So we were probably, 25, 26 kilometers an hour, quite a ways for the ride. So I didn't have to stop and wait for her. In fact, sometimes she was waiting for me at the top of the hills. That's going to allow you not only to keep a faster pace, it's going to allow you to cover more ground. You're going to be able to see a lot more. It's going to be a lot more fun going to different places. And of course, how is it on hills?
Amazing.
Yeah, so hills are always a challenge, especially on a kid's bike, because really a kid's bike generally is quite a bit heavier compared to the rider's weight than a regular bike, and that makes it really hard on those hills. And those long hills is what makes going for rides not so much fun. When you have the e-bike, the longer rides are fun and the hills are no problem at all. To encourage longer riding, we do have a suspension fork on the front here, so that's going to smooth out the ride. And really, this is set up as a mountain bike, so you can go on trails and go exploring, and it's going to help keep you in control of the bike. So not only is it going to make it more comfortable, but you're also still in control of the bike, and that's really important. And speaking of safety and being in control, we've got lights that are built in running on the main battery, so that's really cool. A front light and a tail light here as well. And as I mentioned, that's running off of the main battery. We do actually have a Bosch Power Pack 500. So it's a 500 watt hour battery, which is impressive for a bike this size and this weight with the Active Line. You're going to get tremendous range. And that's a surprise given the price of this bike, the quality of the components, and the high-end battery capacity that Bulls is using. It's really very impressive. Going back to the Bosch Active Line motor here, again, thinking of safety, there's no throttle on this bike. It's not jumpy. It's incredibly smooth. And that's because there's a torque sensor built in here that's measuring your torque, that is how hard you're pedaling, your cadence, that is how quickly your legs are moving, and the speed of the bike 1,000 times per second. So it's essentially reading the rider's mind, knowing exactly what's going on, and then responding accordingly. So you can choose from 4 levels of assistance on the display here. They've gone with the Pure-On display, which is a great idea for a kid's bike, for a mountain bike. It's much more crash resistant than the larger Intuvia display. Super easy to use because there's just 2 buttons, the plus and the minus. And it's also not removable, so you don't have to worry about accidentally forgetting it on the bike and it being stolen. So we've got the plus and the minus buttons here to choose all the way from off. Eco, which gives you 50% of your input power, up to Tour, which gives you about 120% of your input power, so quite a bit more. Sport, and then Turbo for the hills. You're going to be able to see your current speed. Down here you can choose to see either your current level of assistance, or if you press and hold the minus, you can look at your trip distance. We've done 5K so far. The total on the bike is 69K, and the range, and this is really cool, if I go down to Eco, we can see we still have 150 kilometers left on our range. If I move it up to Tour, you can see we have 91, And if I go up to turbo, you can see that I have 65 kilometers. So it's an incredible range on this bike because of its size, the efficiency of the active line motor, and that 500 watt-hour battery. While we're up here, you can see we've got a fairly flat angle on the stem, narrower bars, which is great for shorter arms, and a fairly forward riding position, but still comfortable. And that forward riding position gives you a lot of control over the bikes. I like the fact that we have a visual indicator on the gears here, and this is the Shimano Altis. It's an 8-speed. We have a fairly decent climbing gear, and on any of the hills we've tried, my daughter's had no problem climbing the hills on an easier gear and put it up even into sport. She rarely needs turbo and just flies right up the hill. Up front here we also have Tektro hydraulic disc brakes. That's so important on an e-bike. Even an e-bike this size, if you can, get hydraulic brakes. They're not going to need adjusting. The cable isn't going to stretch. It's not going to break or rust. And you can really stop this bike with one finger on each brake lever. So you're not trying to stop a heavy bike with the motor and the battery going down a steep hill by the strength of your hands. You actually can rely on the hydraulic fluid. And so we've seen that. You'll see that in the ride test video. We've got some pretty steep hills here, and my daughter had no problem controlling the bike. And there's a lot of modulation, so she's not having to lock up the wheels, and that's really important as well. The tires, these are the Schwalbe Blackjack. You can see they have a fairly aggressive tread pattern. How did you find it on the trails? Were you getting a lot of grip and traction?
Yep.
Yeah, no problem on that loose gravel we rode over?
Nope.
Nope, so they dig right in. But the interesting thing is that you can see the pattern here in the middle. When we get onto pavement, we're actually almost on a smooth tire. We're not getting a lot of rolling resistance. But if it's wet, if it's soft material, if it's gravel, mud, then the rest of the tire comes into play and really digs in. So that's great. And the Schwalbe does have the active line K-guard, so there's a fair degree of puncture resistance. But of course, I always put tire sealant in the tubes because we've got a lot of blackberry thorns around here. And the last thing you want to do is have a flat tire to interrupt your ride. You can see we actually have attachment points here for a rack. We have an adjustable rack that would probably fit on there, and you can also put fenders. So SKS makes some 24-inch fenders that I've got in for this bike. I haven't installed them yet because we're in a dry season, but for the winter we'll definitely put those on. Fairly comfortable saddle, is that right? The seat's nice and comfy?
Yes.
Yeah, good. And love the bright colors, helps with the visibility. Same with those lights. And we do have a quick release on the saddle here to get that higher and lower as well. So hopefully I've covered everything on the bike. If I've missed anything, you can head over to our website at citruscycles.ca. There you'll find the detailed specs, current pricing. You can contact us to set up an appointment to come try it out for yourself. You can even order online if you wish. And we're going to do a video ride test review now for you as well. And like I said, if you have any questions, head over to our website at citruscycles.ca. Okay, and as I push the bike up the creek here, I realized that I forgot to mention that the bike does have walk mode enabled. And so to access that, there's a button on the bottom here that we press and hold, and on the screen it says Walk Plus. That's your cue that you now press and hold the plus button, and that will enable the walk mode. So I'll do that again here. Press and hold that, Walk Plus, press and hold plus, and now the bike's going to move itself along at a walking pace. Watch, because the crank arms will move, and as soon as I let go of the plus, it exits walk mode. So it's a great way if you do need to get through pedestrian area or ride off the ferry or something like that. You don't want to push a heavy bike, you can use the walk mode. One more thing I forgot to mention is the bike does include a handy kickstand here. It's actually mounted to the frame using these two bolts here, so it's not clamped on and it's going to wiggle off, although from time to time you want to check that those are tight. But it is nice and stable. It's back far enough that if you move the bike, the pedals turn, they're not going to collide with the kickstand. Speaking of the pedals, we do have a kind of a mountain bike style pedal here. You can see they're metal. We've got these ridges on here. Those are to keep your feet from sliding off while you're pedaling. Unfortunately, they're also a little bit sharp, and so if you hit your shin or your leg on there, it is going to hurt. My daughter's not a big fan of these pedals because of that. They do have reflectors, which is nice. So I'm going to switch those out. Of course, that's an easy thing to do. You know, Bulls could have put something smoother on, but then they would have had people complaining that, you know, their feet are sliding off when they're mountain biking. They put something with bumps on, and people will complain that it's cutting their shins. I'm going to change, actually I've got some neat ones from Welgo that have kind of a sandpaper finish on it, so that if you do hit your shin, getting on and off the bike or whatever, it's not going to cut you up, but at the same time your foot is going to not slide off. So decent quality pedals, you may want to change those. We do have the kickstand, and like I mentioned earlier, the saddle can be changed, but actually it's quite comfortable. And the grips could also be changed if you want. They're actually, again, a mountain bike style grip, so they give you lots of control. You're not going to worry about your hands slipping off even when you're riding in the rain. The only downside of these grips is the plug end here isn't removable. So to put a mirror in, I'm either going to have to cut that to put a mirror in the end, put a mirror on the bars here or over here, or change out the grips.